Our goal is to build a more helpful Google for everyone.
पानी डालकर उबालें। आग वाली गली से सीधे जाएं। आज 2 तारीख है।
Okay Google, where was Sholay shot? Ramnagara.
What becomes successful in India, surely the world is going to adopt.
A hearty welcome to all of you here today. Hope you are all safe and taking care of yourself. I welcome to Android 11 Meetup on behalf of GDG Jalandhar. We are so happy to have you join us live. My name is Brijraj and I lead GDG Jalandhar community, and I am Google developer expert for web technologies and Firebase. I am super excited to kickstart this event. In this event, we have lined up some amazing session with great set of speakers who is going to talk about Android 11. Also, we will be talking about new features, APIs and other updates for the developers. As the session progresses, please ask your question in the chat section to the right of the screen. We will share these questions with the speakers who will answer them at the end of the day in Ask Me Anything session. You can view the schedule and the talks on our website. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Varsha Jaiswal. She is a software developer at Fora, co-organizer and WTM ambassador at GDG WTM Jalandhar. Over to you, Varsha.
Thank you so much, Brij, for introduction. Hello everyone, I'm Varsha Jaiswal, a software developer at Fora Infotech, co-organizer and Women Techmakers ambassador at GDG WTM Jalandhar. I'm a community lover in my day-to-day life, and I have been connected to these communities like GDG, WTM, etc. since 4 long years. I'm happy to be here today to welcome you all at Android 11 Meetup. I hope that everyone is safe and strong in this tough situation due to COVID-19 and taking care of themselves and their loved ones. This too shall pass. Till then, stay safe and stay at home. Starting today by thanking our doctors, nurses, police, administrators, bankers, etc. who are there in the front line to serve us in this COVID-19 pandemic. They are working for us to be there to save us. We can stay at home and enjoy the delicious meals with our family, but they are the people who can't deny their service to help us. So let's take an oath today that we will take care of our community, our surrounding, be it a tech community, health community, or any other community. Along with these frontline heroes, I am also thankful to the internet, which helped us in getting connected with our loved ones, helping startups, educations to get connected with their respective users. I'm so glad seeing these teachers and students getting connected over meetings and conferences to share knowledge and to learn something new every day. Internet has played a vital role in supporting small businesses to expand their business in this tough call. Talking about the internet users, there are 500 million plus users there active over internet, and you will be amazed to know that out of these users, 450 million plus users are there using and accessing internet in their smartphones. Connectivity and access provides a foundation for building products and services that are helpful and relevant. So don't you think that for mobile app developers, they are having a great set of users? I would love to get your attention on the number of Android app users and Android users. It had over 2 billion active users in May 2017, which made Android as the largest installed base of any operating system. Android has been the best-selling operating system for mobile since 2011 and for tablet since 2013. Adding to this, Google Play Store features over 2.5 million applications as of March 2020. Isn't it amazing? We know better that how smartphones are changing life of people in India by connecting them with each other, by helping local vendors to showcase their goods with customers across the country, by connecting the corners of the nation under a roof. But yeah, there are areas in the nation who think that internet is not preferred to female. Even though India is the second largest country of internet users, it is still having online gender disparities. There are people who have no idea about the power of the internet, and they feel that using this can be harmful for them. There are people who could have expanded their small-scale businesses to the large scale of users if only they would have any idea of something called internet. To help these people, Google along with Tata Trust came up with a program called Internet Sathi to help the women in rural India by improving digital literacy and bringing them online. I would like to show you a small clip about Internet Sathi and the effect it had in improving the digitalization era in India.
हमारे अम्मी पापा ने ये कहा था कि इंटरनेट सेफ नहीं है, इसीलिए महिलाओं को इंटरनेट नहीं यूज़ करना चाहिए।
मुझे ऐसा लगता था पहले कि ये सब जो इंटरनेट ये सब हस्बैंड लोगों के लिए है, हमारे लिए नहीं है।
ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में बालिकाओं को जनरली 8वीं के बाद पेरेंट्स पढ़ाते नहीं हैं। भीलवाड़ा डेयरी ने गूगल के साथ मिलकर उन बच्चियों को इंटरनेट जागरूकता अभियान के तहत प्रशिक्षण दिया गया।
Lots of women who have used the internet for the first time have really transformed their daily lives.
HWGO कैंपेन मैंने अटेंड किया था, उसके बाद धीरे धीरे मेरी जिज्ञासा इंटरनेट के प्रति बढ़ती जा रही है।
इंटरनेट से सीखी मैं डिजाइन, जब नई नई डिजाइन बना कर गिराईखाना दिखाऊं तो और हमारे गिराई की बढ़ती है, सिलाई भी बढ़ती है।
While we made huge progress in the number of urban women who are coming online, we are still struggling in terms of the rural women who we can get online.
एजुकेशन लोन के बारे में जानकारी निकल सकती है क्या?
औरतों में नई उमंग जगी है जो कि कंप्यूटर द्वारा पता चलने लगा।
उनके पास इतने सारे ढेर सारे सवाल होंगे जिसका जवाब इंटरनेट देगा उनको।
पूरे भारत देश में लड़कियां और लेडीज इतनी आगे बढ़ जाएगी कि उसका अंदाजा भी नहीं है।
Thank you so much, Rich, for introduction. As we saw that how a mobile app helped users to get connected with the internet and decreasing the gap between the developer and the user. It was just an example of helping the community by learning and sharing the knowledge. This video was just to show that how we can come with a basic idea to help our surrounding, be it by building a mobile application, designing a small website, or a simple pen and paper session. We can decrease this gap by acting upon the opportunities of serving people. Focusing precisely on mobile applications, there are a list of mobile applications which led a business in growing multifold. I can take the example of Paytm, Google Maps, WhatsApp, etc. They just came up with a single thought of providing a platform to the users, and we can see that where they are now and how much they help the users in many ways. We Indians have so many opportunities to help our surrounding, to help our neighborhood by providing them softwares, applications, platforms they need. Allow me to play a second video of people who inspire others by developing mobile applications, training their nearby people, and sharing knowledge with each other.
चलिए आपको ले चलता हूं इस छोटे से शहर की सैर पे। कितनी शांति, कितना सुकून है यहाँ, भाग दौड़ से बिल्कुल दूर, राइट? रॉन्ग। जरा बताएंगे सबको आप जा कर रही हैं?
इंटरनेट क्लास।
ये है इनकी इंटरनेट क्लास और ये है इस क्लास की टीचर परवीन बेगम।
मैं एक इंटरनेट साथी हूँ। मैं इन सबको इंटरनेट यूज करना सिखाती हूँ।
अच्छा, ये सब सीखने का फायदा
कौन बताएगा? अब रेशमा। ओके गूगल, लेमन ग्रास पद्मावती इंटरनेट साथी।
ये है पद्मावती। इनके गांव में किसी ने लेमन ग्रास के बारे में सुना तक नहीं था, पर इंटरनेट की मदद से इन्होंने यहाँ लेमन ग्रास की फसल लहरा दी। आज देखिए, इनका लेमन ग्रास ऑयल एक से बढ़ के एक प्रोडक्ट्स में यूज होता है। और पद्मावती जी, आपकी इंस्पिरेशन?
परवीन गारो।
देखते ही देखते पद्मावती की जैसी कहानियों ने कई लोगों को इंस्पायर किया गजब की चीजें करने के लिए, जैसे चन्नापटना के रियाज अन्ना। ये मूर्तियां पूरी दुनिया में सिर्फ यहीं बनती हैं और इस सदियों पुरानी कला को सलामत रखने का इन्होंने एक नया तरीका सीखा, इंटरनेट। बस फिर क्या, आज ये मूर्तियां दुनिया भर में छाई हुई हैं और ऑनलाइन 4.8 स्टार्स पाना भी खुद ही में एक कला है, नहीं? वैसे कलाकार तो यहाँ एक से बढ़कर एक है और देखना चाहेंगे तो फिर चलिए। ऋतिक, बाप रे, ये ऋतिक बाबू भी आर्टिस्ट हैं, नेशनल लेवल मार्शल आर्टिस्ट, और ये अपने टाइक्वांडो की प्रैक्टिस करते हैं
रेलवे स्टेशन पे।
जी हाँ, रेलवे स्टेशन पे। पूछिए कैसे? पूछिए ऐसे। ऋतिक को नेशनल चैंपियन बनना,
वर्ल्ड चैंपियन,
सॉरी वर्ल्ड चैंपियन। इसलिए ये रोज यहाँ आके इंटरनेशनल खिलाड़ियों की ट्रेनिंग वीडियोस देखते हैं। और ऋतिक जैसे लोगों को देख के और भी लोग इंस्पायर होते हैं। कुछ पढ़ने आते हैं, कुछ पढ़ाने, कुछ आते हैं मनोरंजन के लिए, और कुछ आते हैं दुनिया बदलने। मीट गिरिजा एंड वैष्णवी, ऐप डेवलपर्स जो अपने शहर के लिए एक सेफ्टी ऐप पे काम कर रहे हैं। इनकी इंस्पिरेशन
आमेटा
सेंथिल कुमार, एंटरप्रेन्योर, टीचर, पर सबसे पहले एक कोडर जिन्होंने गर्भवती महिलाओं के लिए एक हेल्थ ऐप बनाया है।
In the village, it is impossible for pregnant women to go to the hospital, which is 20 kilometers away. I use code to make certain devices and apps that bring the hospital to them in this crucial time.
दरअसल ये कहानी टेक्नोलॉजी की नहीं है, ना ही इंटरनेट की। ये कहानी है सेंथिल की, ऋतिक की, रियाज की, पद्मावती की और हर उस इंडियन की जो किसी नए तरीके, किसी नई तरकीब से अपनी और दूसरों की जिंदगी बदल रहे हैं और जाने अनजाने में एक दूसरे को भी इंस्पायर कर रहे हैं। हमें इंस्पायर कर रहे हैं।
Truly, India inspires India. We take inspiration from someone and pass it in our circle to inspire others by making good things together. With that, I would thank you people for listening me and joining this e-meet today. Bye, take care. Over to you, Rich.
Thank you so much, Varsha, for the keynote. I cannot thank you enough for the inspiration. Now, our next speaker, Jitin Sharma, Google developer expert for Android and leading BLR Android community in Bangalore. And also, he is an Android engineer at Gojek. He'll be going to talk about what's new in Android 11. Over to you, Jitin.
Hi everyone. Before I start my session, I would definitely like to call out what a great introduction to this event was, and it was quite thoughtful. And I personally felt really great watching all those videos, and I hope everyone in the live stream also felt the similar. So yeah, without any delay, let me start my session. My session is around what's new in Android 11. So my name is Jitin Sharma. I work as an Android engineer at Gojek. I'm a Google developer expert for Android also. And this session is around what kind of behavior changes you can expect in OS as Android 11 comes up, and what kind of APIs, libraries, and tools and goodies are available to developers with the new release of Android. So Android 11 is in beta right now. So if you are part of the beta program, whether you have a Pixel device or any other device, you should be able to get the second preview, which is quite bug free till now, but they are still accepting bug requests. If you find any bug, do report it to Google, and you can try it out. You can try out Android 11 right now. So starting with like what's new in Android 11, let's start with UI. So the first thing which Android 11 has built in an UI is window insets. So window insets, it's not a new API. It's an API which has existed from like earlier versions of Android. It's revamped in the newer versions of Android with Android 11 to provide a better information about what kind of content is being displayed on the screen. So the content could be like status bar, navigation bar, or IME. IME is like the one of the most important example where this window inset API comes into play. So if you want to use the window inset API, you can just do set on apply window inset listener, which will give you the view and the inset. So the first thing which we can do is we have different types of window insets like window inset.type.ime. IME is the virtual keyboard which you see on your devices. So now we have actually an API to actually see whether the keyboard is visible or not. There was no standard way to do this till now, which is kind of very bad because applications which have a lot of form inputs always struggle with these things. But now with Android 11, we have an API to check whether keyboard is visible or not, and then get insets around this IME. Basically, get the size of the keyboard and what kind of content on the screen the keyboard is occupying. So we have APIs to get all this data. Earlier, you could do this with, there were multiple ways to do this, but nothing was more reliable. But this is the most reliable way to do starting from Android 11. Once you get, the handle of IME, whether it's visible or not, the second thing which you want to do is, animate your UI or animate the IME, the keyboard itself according to your UI. So this is again very important for applications, which show form-related data or any kind of input, because as keyboard comes up, it takes up the content of a lot of content in your screen, and you might want to, update. You might want to animate the UI of your screen according to how keyboard is coming, like depending on how much height it is taking and how fast is it coming or how slow it is coming. Again, there was no API to do this earlier. There were like you could listen to global layouts and then calculate height yourself. But now you can actually do these things. So there are two ways of handling this animation. One is system driven, where system opens the keyboard for you and gives you callback, and you can update your UI according to that callback. This is the left animation which you see. On the right side, what you do is you take the control away from the system of opening the keyboard, and depending on use cases or animations of your app, you can actually force open the keyboard with sort of animations which work well with your UI. So for the first case, what you do is you use window insert animation dot callback, which can be applied to, let's say, edit text, which represents the input type. Once you use these callbacks, you get override functions like on progress, on start, on end. So these basically tell you how the keyboard is opening up from the bottom, and as keyboard opens up, you get continuous callbacks, and using those callbacks you can animate your UI to go upward or downward depending on how it is going up. And then you can also know on start and on end to know when the callback has started and when callback has ended. So this basically allows you to listen to the changes of the keyboard height, and then animate your UI accordingly. For the other thing where you want to take the control, basically you can take the control using window insert controller.control window insert animation. This allows you to control the animation of the insets. So if we take the type IME here, we can take the control and then open it. We can even pass things like linear interpolator. So in this case, it's a linear interpolator, which means we want the keyboard to open in a linear motion. But you can have some other kind of interpolators also, your custom path interpolator, and you can define the how motion will be there. And then you can also get callbacks like ready, cancelled, and finished to know when the animation has finished or if it was cancelled. Window inserts have multiple types. IME is one of them. So IME represents your keyboard related motion. Display cutout represents notch, but unlike IME, which are dynamic because they can come and go, notch is not something which is dynamic because it's like a physical part of the phone. So but you can still get the insets of the notch using insert type.display cutout. And then you also have system bars. So system bar represents the navigation bar here. So navigation bar can or cannot be dynamic. It may or may not also be present depending if the user has enabled the navigation bar on the bottom instead of using the motion based gestures. So yeah, again, if you have use case, you can also use system bar window insert type to animate your UI depending on whether system bars are visible or not. You can look at this sample, whatever code sample I showed using this link. So it has the whole link of, it has the whole code of window insert animations, whether it's system driven or user driven. Conversations. So conversations is the second biggest change when it comes to even OS level UI. So conversation is very important because as we use our phones, a lot of time we use our phones are for conversations only, whether we are talking to a person on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Slack, or whatever. So conversation is important part of our daily life. So what Android 11 does is it has a separate pane in the notification bar, in the notification window for conversation itself. And right now it was not there, and it is possible that some important conversation might get lost in the sea of notifications, as a lot of apps might send you a lot of notifications. But now you have a separate window for it, and all your conversations reside in this window. Also, these conversation conversation entries in this window have priorities. You can define what kind of conversation you want to be on priority or alerting or silent. If it's silent, you won't get notification for it. You can set priority also, which means this is an important conversation, I need to get back to it whenever someone replies. And then it also goes to the top of the bar because it's a priority notification. You can set alerting notifications also, which will still send you an alert, but they are a bit lower on the priority than the priority notifications. Also, the UI has changed a bit. If you look closely, you have a number count also on the right, and you can see the people's photo on the left. So these are all part of the standard APIs, and all the applications which use this API will look like this. So let's say if you have a chat app and you want your chat notifications to be part of the conversation panel in Android 11. So first thing you need to do is build a person. So person is also an existing API in Android. You might have used it earlier. And then you have to create a shortcut now. So shortcut, again, existing API to actually build shortcuts, app shortcuts. But now shortcut info compat builder takes a person as a builder function. So you can set the person to it, and then push this dynamic shortcut. Once you have done that, then you can start creating your notification. So for conversation panel, the notification has to be created in a messaging style notification. If you have a chat app, you might have been doing this if you have that inline reply button on the notification, so that using messaging style. If you're not, you need to use this if you want your notification in Android 11 to be in the conversation panel. And in this notification, you can set the shortcut ID of the shortcut which you have built right now using the shortcut info compat builder. And once you do that, your notification should start coming in the conversation panel. And then user can set the alert accordingly, whether he wants your notifications to be priority or not. Building on top of this, we have bubbles. So bubbles are like a resizable activity which float around your system UI, irrespective of which app is open. So bubbles is something which has recently moved to a stable API. It was present as a developer option in Android 10, so for users to try out and how to do it. So now in 11 they are stable. They are better than system alert window, which was the previous alternative to do this kind of stuff, which apps like Facebook Messenger use. So now there is a API for doing the exact this thing. Bubbles are also created using the notification API. So it's the same API, just you can create the bubble using the exact same API. So let's say you want your activity to be resizable. You want a bubble activity. So first thing which you need to do is have resizable activity tag as true in manifest. Once you have that, you can create an intent for your activity, the activity which has to be resized. And then what you create is a bubble metadata within the notification itself. You have to set a shortcut ID. So shortcut is something which we saw how we build in the slides few slides ago. So you use the same concept here and create a shortcut ID. Once you set the shortcut ID in the bubble metadata, then you can create a notification with that metadata. Once you push this notification, a bubble gets created in the system UI, and then that whenever user clicks on that button, and the activity gets maximized, and then you can minimize or close it as well. So yeah, privacy. So coming from like Android 9, 10, even Android 11 has a lot of stuff added for privacy, which we saw in like earlier releases also. Android is moving towards more and more privacy and security of the user. So a highlight of what's happening in privacy in Android 11 is that you have APIs for accessing what kind of data your application is requesting. A lot of changes have been done into foreground and background services, especially around location. There is changes to package visibility, there is scope storage, and there is a concept of auto reset permissions. So this is just a highlight. I won't be going into details of this because there is a session right after my session around how you adapt your apps to the privacy changes by Saurabh Arora. So stay tuned in for that session, and he will go over the details of few of these things. So let's look at developer goodies, what we get as Android 11 comes. The first thing is wireless ADB. So wireless ADB is something which is now system itself is supporting, and it's really good because you don't have to now care about hassles of all the wires, type C, type non-type C, or whatever kind of charging your phone supports. And wireless ADB was something which is still present, but basically you have to use ADB and set TCP ports. It's quite not reliable, but with the system native support in Android 11, this will become a lot reliable, and yeah, so it will help a lot. Android Studio version 4.2 is introducing support for this. Basically, what will happen in Android Studio 4.2, you can actually generate a QR code within Android Studio, and you can scan the QR code in your mobile, and then your laptop and mobile will get wirelessly connected via ADB. So that should be really great to have a simpler connection than using the wires. Nullability annotations. So some important nullability annotations have been added. This is really important because as a lot of code bases start moving over to Kotlin, these annotations become really important because Kotlin can using Kotlin with platform types where SDKs, Android SDKs are written in Java where nullability was not really enforced, can actually cause errors or crashes. So right now, if you use variables or function return types with @nullable or @non-null, they produce errors if they are not used correctly. If you use a nullable value as a non-null value in your own code base, they produce error. But right now, framework is adding more and more annotations to the existing APIs. So what they are actually doing is they will add something called recently nullable and recently non-null. It's a warning to you that this return type has recently changed its nullability type. So it's a heads up. You might want to change the code base, but it won't actually fail the build because it creates a warning. But in the next major release of Android, let's say something was recently nullable in Android 11, it will become nullable in Android 12. So then you might start getting errors depending on how you're using it. So warnings are a good way to incrementally update your code base as things change. Crash reporting API. This is like one of the most exciting APIs, which is part of Android 11. So you can actually query why your application was crashed. So what you do is from the activity manager, you get a new method called get historical process exit reasons, and it lists down the reasons why your application has crashed over the lifetime of the OS. So reasons could be like few of these. Let's say reason low memory. Your application crashed because system was on low memory, or reason crash. So reason crash is like just any crash which might have occurred in your code. So crashes are something which I'm pretty sure any stable application would be using a reporting service like Firebase Crashlytics or some other reporting service. So reason crash is something which you probably are already tracking. But crash reporting services often struggle to find out things like your application might have been closed due to low memory, or even ANRs. Like ANRs are something which you can get through Android Vitals, but generally crash reporting services struggle to find out ANRs. But now with this API, you can actually find out ANRs, and you can find out ANRs and log them in your own server. Other things are like reason user requested. So this reason comes when user will force stop your application from the settings. So this can happen due to a lot of reasons why user will force stop. One is like your application might be consuming a lot of battery, and Android often pops up a window like this application is consuming a lot of battery, and it comes up with a force stop button. So user might click that. So this might be a area for you to see. If you get a lot of reason user requested in your data, then your app might be consuming a lot of battery. And then reason permission change. So this happens when runtime permissions have been changed in background, either by user or by the system. Since Android 11 can auto reset permissions, so your app might crash due to that also. So you can query for that reason also. So you can use all these reasons, and you can push these reports to your own server and have a chart of all these things to basically find out like what are the various areas where your app is crashing and what you can do about it. All of these come with a description, a timestamp, and a lot of information around them, like why a certain reason might have happened. So you get a lot of data around this, which you can look over. ADB incremental. So ADB has a incremental mode right now. So what incremental mode means, if you have a huge APK, especially if you are building games where APK sizes can go into hundreds of MBs or even GBs, incremental allows you to incrementally install the APK using ADB. So you can see this graph where without ADB incremental this APK required 68 seconds, but with incremental it required only 7 seconds. So there's like a huge change in amount of time it takes to push APK via ADB. If you want to use this, you can just do ADB install and send a flag or incremental. Even if you're not building games, this might be useful for even apps which have like huge APK size. Like personally, I work with an app where debug APK size go over like 100 MB. And we often use command line tools to build our application instead of Android Studio, and then push our application using ADB. So using ADB in that case with incremental flag can save a couple of seconds of your build time. So definitely something to try out. So behavior changes. So since there are a lot of behavior changes which are coming in Android 11, your applications may break in different regions of your app due to some reason or other. So how do you test these behavior changes? First of all behavior changes only occur when you start targeting the Android SDK version 30 or R. So if you're not targeting that version, your applications won't be affected. If you are doing that, there is a UI in the developer options called the app compatibility changes. So what you can do here is basically in isolation, you can turn on and off features. Like you can turn on scope storage feature, you can turn off, GWP ASIN feature, or you can turn off. So what it allows you to do is basically turn on one feature and you test your app in the isolation of that feature. What areas of my app is scope storage breaking. So it's really good for testing out, which platform changes is breaking which part of your app. So you can definitely use this. You can also do this via command line using ADB shell, and you can pass around these these keys called, let's say, default scope storage to your application. The definition of all these keys which are written here in the slide are present in the developer documentation, so you can look over them. Coming to graphics and media, so Android 11 supports something called animated HEIF images. So HEIF is not really a popular format, but it's kind of gaining momentum. It's a animated format similar to GIFs, but it's like very small and more performative. So Android 11 is a native support for converting HEIF images into animated image drawables. So what you do is you use image decoder API for this. Image decoder API was introduced in Android 10 as a standard replacement for bitmap factory. So if you have a HEIF file, you can create a source out of it. Then you can decode this file using a method called decode drawable. And then if it's an animated kind of file, then you can cast it as animated image drawable, and then you can start the animated animation. So image decoder, again, I would like to call out, it's like a really nice API. It was not added in Android 11, but in Android 10, but like it has been improved in Android 11. It allows you to basically decode a lot of images and do transformations also, which was earlier not possible, like set a sample size or even target size, which you can do. So yeah, definitely something to try out. There's more. So 5G, yeah, Android has like now API support for 5G also. This is added in Connectivity Manager, which is a system service. So you can check for capability called net capability not metered, and find out what kind of 5G network the phone is running on. And you can even check like downstream bandwidth and compare it with whether what you consider as a fast network or not. And if it is a fast network, you might want to change the way you do network calls, which you might not do on a, let's say, 3G or 4G phone. 5G is not something which is present in India right now at a cellular telecom level, but phones have been present now which 5G supports. Hopefully by next year we will start having like 5G support. So this is something which you guys can keep in mind as these capabilities come out. Biometric authenticator strength. So biometric authenticator strength is like a way to know how much how much biometrics has user enabled in his phone. So this is really good for like finance related apps where you might want to keep access to other areas of your applications to only certain people, to only if the biometric is enabled, let's say fingerprint or face scanner. So you can actually set a strength from the authenticators. Let's say biometric strength strong. I want the biometric strength to be strong. Only then I will allow this region of my app to be operable. And then you can check the existing strength. So if it is not, then you can basically ask the user to enroll into biometric security, whether it's fingerprint or face recognition. And once he does that, then he can access the area of your app. Autofill keyboard integration. So autofill is something which was present. It has been there since few versions of Android. It allows you to basically autofill any form which is present in your native app with a drop down. Basically, you see a lot of stuff in drop down, whether it's your email, house address, or email address. Autofill now has an integration with keyboard, which means all the autofill suggestion now get pushed to the keyboards. So this is basically how it looks like. Since keyboards, most of the modern keyboards have suggestion tab on the top where they show spelling suggestion or something like that. Now what autofill can do is it can push its own suggestion directly into the keyboard. It actually doesn't send the data, so the keyboards actually don't access your data, whether it's your email address, password, or even credit card number, but it actually pushes request and response. So the whole UI itself is pushed, and this is what it looked like. And this UI could be for anything, like it could be for a address, email address, it could be a card number, or even house address. So this is really good if you're building a keyboard app. So if you are building a keyboard app, then basically how you can do is you can use this method to create inline suggestions. So inline suggestion request, so you can request what kind of autofill suggestions you would want in your keyboard. Let's say you don't want payment related stuff, you can not request that. And then what you get is a response. So as I said, keyboards actually don't receive the data itself, like data could be like the address or the email address. They actually receive a response, and this response can be used to show the UI in the pane of the keyboard. So that's how you can do it. So yeah, really good integration. If you are a keyboard app developer, then you should definitely look into this. Resource loader. So resource loader, another new API within Android 11. This basically allows you to dynamically load assets and resources like drawables or colors or anything else. You can even override existing resources by having the same key name, or you can have new resources downloaded from the server. So resource loader adds two new APIs. One is resources provider and second is the loader itself. The loader can be added to the base resources of the app. So resources provider can then create a provider from, let's say, load from directory or load from APK. Now this directory or APK can come from your own server over the air, and it has all the data. It has all the new resources, whether it's like an asset file or a drawable file or a values file. So once you download them and they are added to the base resources of our application, next time you request a drawable or a value by another key, you get the new one which you downloaded from your own server. So yeah, pretty good API. So non-platform. So there are a lot of non-platform changes which have been there. For example, Jetpack now has 70 libraries. There have been a new developments, like we have Hilt, which is a extension of sort of Dagger, and it allows you to set up Dagger with less boilerplate code. Gives you a lot of extensions and functions. Paging 3.0 is available with coroutine supports, and CameraX is now in beta. So yeah, a lot of libraries which are being released every 2 weeks. So good stuff. Jetpack Compose, I think everyone might have heard of it. So Jetpack Compose is a new UI toolkit for Android. It's a reactive way to write UI and completely Kotlin based without any XML or something like that. It's in pre-alpha right now, being developed in the open. So a lot of feedback is being taken by the Android team. So you can head over to the Kotlin Lang Slack channel if you want to basically try out Jetpack Compose and give feedback to the people. So yeah, definitely something worth trying out. So yeah, with this, I would like to end this session. So there are a lot of things in Android 11 which I might not have covered because there are so many API changes. So I did not cover all of them in due to time constraint. But you are definitely welcome to look at the developer website to do this and check out what kind of features might fit into your applications, and definitely give feedback to the Android team using Google issues. So yeah, so that's it from my side. I think there is a session, Q&A session after all these sessions. So if you have any questions, do post them in the comments, or if you have been given a form link, I will be taking up those session in the later Q&A Ask Me Anything session. So thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Jatin, for speaking us about Android 11. It's our pleasure to have you join us this session today with the community. Without further ado, I would like to invite Saurav Arora. He is a Google developer expert for Android and working as a senior software engineer at Wiki in Singapore. He's going to talk about privacy changes in an Android 11. Over to you, Saurav.
Hello, hi everyone. I'm Saurabh Arora. I'm a Google developer expert for Android. And today we'll be covering some privacy changes and like what are the new privacy changes and how you could adapt your app for these new privacy changes that have been introduced in Android 11. All right. So over the last couple of Android releases, there's been quite a lot of focus on privacy. And these changes are really important because smartphones contain a lot of information about our lives. And it's important that, as a user, we trust the smartphone that's in our hand. So with this mantra in mind, Android has made a coordinated effort over the last couple of years to make it a more privacy-centered platform. And these efforts continue onwards in Android 11. Like, for example, Android 10 paved the way for changes into location permissions, and these kind of features are being exemplified in Android 11. So today we look into some of the new changes that are introduced. This will revolve around permission changes, foreground service types, scope storage, package visibility, and a new feature called data access auditing. So first up, let's look at permission-related changes that have been added in Android 11. So in Android 10, actually, when the users were presented with an option to select location, like when the location dialog came up in Android 11 and users were presented with an option to select allow only during foreground, users ended up selecting that option nearly half of the time. All right. So with that in mind, like because users are getting really more privacy centric and they like to restrict access to permissions that's been given, Android 11 extends these granular control to users' private data over to microphone as well as camera, and also significantly limits access to background location for your apps. Now, in Android 11, along with an option to say, grant this permission while using the app, the dialog will also have an option which says, oh, only grant this permission only this one time. So there's a third option that's been added to this. All right. And that's just not for location. Like my previous example was based off on location. But but for Android 11, this new option to grant permission only this one time has actually also been extended to microphone access. Like, for example, if you are let's say a transport app, right? And you have a feature inside your transport app for VoIP call. Like, let's say you want the driver to connect with the rider. And at that point, the user decides to make a call. So following the best practices for permissions, you ask for the permission at that point. And the user is like, hey, I don't feel comfortable letting you record my audio all the time. So there'll be a new option saying only grant this time. Like the moment the user is wanting to make this call to connect to the driver in this example, the user can say, hey, I only want to grant the permission only this one time. Similarly, the same one-time access has now been extended to camera. Here, I would like to emphasize that this is added only for location, camera, and microphone. Other permission accesses currently do not have an allow one time. They will continue to have just the allow and deny options. All right. So as developers, we would be wondering, what do we really need to do to prepare our apps for Android 11? Like, is there something in particular that we need to do for this? Well, to be honest, if your app was following the best practices for permission access that was detailed in Marshmallow, so Android 6.0 was when dangerous permissions and the concept of requesting for permissions was introduced. If you were following the best practices that have been laid down over all the last years, then essentially your app really does not need to do any changes. Everything should just work out of the box for you. So, I've multiple times emphasized that if your apps were following these best practices. So here, I would just do a short diversion and have a look at what are these best practices that we're talking about. So anytime a user needs access to, anytime your app needs access to some private data about the user that is behind a dangerous permission, make sure to check before you actually go ahead and access that private data. Make sure to check that does that permission actually been granted to your app, and make sure to always check for that permission. You should never cache the state that, oh, I was granted the permission previously, so I can just cache it and stop checking it. Nope. Your practice should be to always check for it, because permissions can easily get out of sync. This user can go into system settings, go to your app, and revoke a certain permission that has been granted to you. So never cache the permission state. So always request for the check if the permission is granted to you before you perform any action. If the permission is not granted, go ahead and request for it. If the user denies the permission, then fall back gracefully and explain to the user that, the current functionality that the user is trying to access will not really work because the user declined the permission request. So if you're following these practices, none of the changes introduced as a part of the one-time permission grant will actually have any impact in terms of your code base or the changes you need to make in your app. Another point to highlight here is, even though this is a new feature being introduced in Android 11, the one-time permission change will actually kick in even though you've not updated the target SDK of your app to Android R or Android 11 or API level 30. So even if you have an app which targets Android 10 and it's installed on an Android 11 device, the one-time permission prompt will still appear. The reason being, there's an inherent assumption that the apps will automatically handle this out of the box, because ideally no code changes are needed for this if best practices were being followed. So this could be a feature change that they could introduce, like the Android team can introduce in Android 11 without breaking your apps. All right. Okay. So previously, when we looked into this one-time permission access, I mentioned that Android 10 split location permissions into foreground and background, and Android 11 actually puts more changes onto location permission in particular, because location permission is special. Users can sometimes get worried that apps are continuously tracking them. So for this, Android 10 split it into foreground and background. And what Android 11 does so in Android 10 they made an option that you request for foreground access and you request for background access, but you could request all of these two permissions together. In Android 11, actually the process has now become incremental, because there's you'll see it in the next example of what do I mean by incremental. So on previous Android 10, when you said, hey, grant this permission, you actually had an option, right? The users could say allow all the time or allow only when in use. Allow all the time meant allow background permission request, allow background location access as well. This is slightly different in Android 11. When you say I want background location, this will be a two-step process. First up, the users will get an option to say, hey, I want to grant hey, sorry, the app is actually asking for foreground location permission access. Notice there's no option over there saying allow all the time, because that all the time is now removed from your permission request. So the user first has to say, hey, yes, I'm okay to grant foreground permission access to this app. Once the user says I can grant foreground permission, another dialog will appear which will inform the user that this app also needs background location access. And no longer can the user grant background location access in app, because allow all the time has been removed. So what now would happen is there is an explicit call to action, which will take the user to the system settings, where the user has to explicitly again grant background location permission to your app. And do note that at this point, there's still a deny option. So what the user could do is the user could grant you foreground, then because you ask for background location, it will take you to the system screen where there's a deny option and the user can deny it. Deny like all the location permission that was given to you. So this is just a gotcha. Like I just wanted to highlight that again, the importance of checking permissions every time you perform an action. Like the foreground was granted, but because of a request to background, even foreground was revoked. So when you come back to the app, don't just assume you have the permissions. Make sure to check before taking any action regarding permissions. Also regarding accessing users' private data, which are gated behind permissions. So this change actually takes place if your app is targeting Android API level R. But if you're not targeting Android API level R and your user is running your app on an Android 11 device, the allow all the time option is still not available. That will still not be presented to the user. Instead of a two-step process, the first dialog shown to the user will actually be a expanded dialog, which will have an option to ask user to go into the system settings and explicitly grant the permission to the user. Also note, when I said go into the system settings, the prompt that appears both when your app is targeting Android R or not targeting Android R will have a call to action which will deep link the user to the system screen. Okay, so staying with the theme of permissions, let's look at auto reset permissions. So auto reset is, let's say, an automated process of revoking permissions that have been granted to you. A lot of users install a lot of apps, and then we just want to use it one time or a couple of times, and then people just tend to forget about it, and those apps just keep on lying on the phone, continuing to access sensitive and private data of the user. So auto reset permission is a way that if an app on the device has not been accessed for several months, the system will reset the app's permission. And look at it like being exactly the same way as the user going to system settings and revoking the permission from your app. This will behave exactly the same way, just that now the system is doing it for you. All right. And when the system auto revokes the app permission, the system will inform the user through a notification in case the user wants to take an action and grant back the permission to your app. But I figure here a lot of people have questions about, hey, what if my app primarily works in the background? Because I said, if the system detects your app has not been used in the foreground for a couple of months, it will auto reset. And you're like, but my app primarily works in the background. Mine is a smart device connectivity app, or it's an app which automatically syncs the user's data. So it's just always working in the background. The user never really needs to open it. So for such apps, you can actually educate the user in app, letting them know that, on Android 11, my permissions will be auto reset, the permissions you've granted to me. So you can ask the user via this new intent flag that's been introduced, which will take the user to the system settings screens where they can disable auto reset permission revocation for your app. So the users will actually go back to this screen where they can disable this auto reset permission. So there is a way to opt out for it, but it's under users' control, and you should educate your users that, hey, please don't auto reset my permissions. And as usual, be careful when using this. Your app should really have a very valid use case that it needs to operate in the background for the user, and hence you're asking them to remove the capability of system auto resetting the permissions for your app. All right, so that covers permissions. Next up, let's look at the new foreground services that has been added in Android 11. So Android 10 had actually first up introduced the concept of foreground service types. So what this meant is, if you're running a service in the foreground, that is you're running a service which is displaying a notification to the user, you could access users' private information inside that service as long as you explicitly declared your intention in the app's manifest to do so. So it had introduced foreground service types for, let's say, syncing, media player, phone calls, media projection, location, etc. But actually only 2 of them were enforced. What I mean by enforced is, even though there were new foreground service types included in Android 10, enforcing meant that only for location and media projection did you actually need to say that, hey, explicitly mention in the manifest that I will be accessing private data. For others, even if you did not mention, you could get away with it. Like, you could just create a foreground service and try to access phone call information without actually specifying it as a foreground service type, and the system would still let you access. But for location, that was never the case. You have to explicitly define it. And now in Android 11, that explicit definition includes camera. So if you want to access camera information using a foreground service, you have to mention it in the manifest that this service is going to access camera, so that the system can let the user know that there's a service running in the foreground via notification, which is accessing the user's camera. So over here, I do foresee a few changes for developers. I know a few, I've seen open source projects and talked to a few developers where they use the foreground service as a way to warm start the camera before the user actually uses it. So if you're doing something like that inside your foreground service, you'll need to define camera as a foreground service type so that the user knows that something is using the camera currently in the foreground. Or not the foreground, like something in the system is that your app in the system is currently accessing camera. Okay, and I mentioned there was a foreground service type for location in Android 10. Android 11 added camera. And mostly, as we saw with permissions, camera and microphone go hand in hand. Like, there are very few use cases where you just want camera access and don't want microphone access, right? So for Android 11, same thing. You also have a new foreground service for microphone, which is enforced. And now you can have the same service which can access multiple types of private data. So you can have one foreground service which specifies that I want to access both camera and microphone information. Just one clarification here. When I say foreground service types, you need to define location, microphone, and camera. That is an additional indication to the user that you'll be accessing these kind of information using this foreground service. It hasn't got anything to do with permissions. So permission has to be granted for these location information to anyways be accessible in your foreground services. So following the best practices, make sure in your foreground services as well you're checking that yes, permission has been granted, and B, in the manifest you've declared your intention to access these kind of informations. Okay, so those are about permissions. Next up is package visibility. So in Android 10, the API allows, so in Android 10 and previous APIs, you could actually check list of all installed packages in your app via the package manager. This would return you all apps that are installed in the operating system. And in Android 11 or Android R, this gets slightly restricted. Apps can no longer query all type of apps that are installed in the current user's device. So here the question might be that what happens to a lot of common package manager cases, because as I've said, you cannot use package manager to query everything that's installed in the system. A lot of these common use cases actually don't change for you. So what am I talking about by common use cases? Like, let's say you want information about your own app, that doesn't change. If you just want to query about system packages, this also doesn't change. Like, the get installed packages method now will return you all the system apps that are installed in your app. It does not return you any third-party app which you do not own. That doesn't change. If you're sending implicit intents to, let's say, capture images, because it's an implicit intent, you're not targeting any particular app. You're saying anybody who can capture an image, go ahead and capture one for me. This also doesn't change. So these kind of usages of package manager actually don't change for you. All right. And lastly, if you're using content providers, this also doesn't change, right? Because content providers are also explicitly declared, and you can query them and get information even though the content provider is a part of the other app. So nothing changes on this aspect. What really changes is if you're trying to access information if a certain specific app is installed. Like let's say you wanted to access this another app, and the system will always now in Android 11 return you name not found exception, even though this app might be installed. So let's say you really still want to know if certain apps are installed, maybe because you want to have image sharing functionality in your app. Like you want to be able to share images. So you want to know which all apps exist in the system which can share images, or you're working in an organization which owns more than one app, right? And you have protocols inside your apps to be able to communicate with each other. So you need visibility, hey, if that other app is installed in the system. There's still a few ways to do it. Basically, in the manifest now, there's a new queries attribute where you need to specify explicitly, list down the packages that your app cares about. And then when you do get install packages, the system packages, along with these explicit packages that you've defined in the manifest, they'll also be returned back to you. If you want list of apps that share certain kind of metadata, like in case here you need to know apps which are able to get access to JPEG images, you can also specify intent filters inside your queries attribute that, hey, my app needs to know any app in the system that is able to handle the intent for image JPEG. So these kind of exceptions are still there inside the package visibility. So it inherently needs to be extremely explicit instead of just saying, give me everything, right? And in case you still have a very exceptional use case where you really need access to all the packages that are installed in the system, and you really cannot work with this new protocol of restricting access to define what kind of apps you can know about, or having to define upfront that these are the packages I'm concerned about, and you really need access to all apps, there's a new permission introduced called query all packages in Android 11. You can include that in your manifest, but do note your distribution on Google Play for this with this permission will actually be gated by a new Google Play policy which is actually supposed to come out in a couple of days, if I'm not mistaken. This policy will list down the standards and what is expected of your app if you want to publish an app in the store which has a query all packages attribute. All right. Okay, so another example I wanted to highlight, which I personally had a question about, like how this would work, is essentially this is also an intent I'm sending off, right? And what us developers do is, at this point, we would actually use the package manager. Like I've just put an example that if you do this, what the system does is it would actually trigger a disambiguation dialog, right? Do you want to select a browser? Do you want to select the app? So what developers do to get around this is we use the package manager. We'll use the package manager. We'll give it this intent, see what kind of apps are returned, and go through all apps that are non-browser and actually use that to launch, because we don't want the user to see this disambiguation dialog. And now, as I said, package manager is restricted. You cannot actually do this unless you explicitly declare that in this example, Google News is what I want to be aware of. And you cannot do that. Like you might not want to do that. So in this case, what you could do is there's a new intent flag called flag activity require non-browser. You could actually use this and the system will do the same thing for you. Now the system will check for you that I will use an app that can handle this, and the app should not be a browser. But in case that's not possible because the user never really has, let's say, the Google News app in this example, then the system, as usual, will throw you the activity not found exception, which you can put a try catch around and then continue on with the regular behavior of launching a browser, or remove this flag and then let the system take a browser which can open this URL for you. So that use case of package manager just to handle deep links into an app should also go away with flag activity require non-browser. Okay, next up, data access auditing. So, as we mentioned, the best practice is be transparent to users. Like let them know what data they are accessing, and it should also be clear to your app why you're accessing this data. But it's easier said than done. sometimes you're working at large organizations where there's a lot of orphan code. Accidental data access keeps on happening. Teams have moved on, and developers might not know that in certain part of their code base, a certain piece of code is actually accessing one of these private data of the users. Another use case is sometimes third-party SDKs would be accessing private information of the user, piggybacking on the permissions that were granted for your app to access, but not explicitly to pass it to the third-party SDK. And they might just be doing it because the permissions are granted for your app. And you don't want all of this to happen. Or let's say you really want to know when these kinds of access patterns are happening. So in Android 11, what you could do is Android 11 actually introduces 2 new APIs to allow developers to be aware that when this kind of accidental or intentional data access is being triggered. So the basic feature is actually a callback which is triggered when such kind of private data is accessed. And along with the callback, you can actually also attribute this private data access to certain logical features inside your app. What I mean by this is, like, let's say you have a bunch of code and there's a spaghetti code and you're accessing certain parts of code are accessing location, somebody's accessing camera, somebody's accessing microphone, and you really want to know when this certain access is happening. So in Android 11, you could there's a new apps ops manager service, which provides a operation noted callback. Now, what this callback is that as soon as your app accesses private information of the user, which is gated behind a permission access, your system will call you in with the stack trace of the code where this permission access took place. Like a stack trace like you get for crash reporting, right? You would get essentially such a similar stack trace pointing you to the position in your code where you actually requested access for this permission. So it's at the point the permission was being requested rather than at the point where the permission has been granted and you're performing data. So just a small thing to note here, it's at the point where you request access to this permission or this private data. All right. And if you want to capture this information throughout your app, you can create a global app callback inside application on create. But if you want to do it at the fragment or activity place, you can do it in their life cycles respectively. Okay. And as I mentioned, you could get information about the stack trace. You could also tag those stack traces or certain parts of your code to certain features. Like let's say there's a find friends feature and you want to rest assured in your analytics tools that my find friends is only accessing contacts and location permission, right? It should never access microphone, even though my app has microphone permission, but the find friends feature should never access it. So you can do that as well, like to prevent such kind of accidental access. What you could do is you could create an attribution context and just create an attribution context. Now, in the same app ops manager where you were getting the callback, you will get this attribution log. So you would get this attribution tag, which will have the same value as the attribution context that you set up. So you can verify those two of them together and conclude that your find friends feature is only accessing these level of permissions. Where is this something like this helpful? Like now you can actually see through your analytics that my find friends is actually accessing only location and contacts information. So it also helps you audit that yes, my feature is only accessing the required permission. It also eventually will help you build better user experiences to the user where you can explain that when find friends is working, what kind of permissions are you accessing? All right. Okay. Next up to talk about scope storage. Okay, so before the introduction of scope storage, let's talk about scope storage. And before the introduction of scope storage in Android 10, actually you had two classifications, right? App storage and scope storage. And Android 10 tried to limit access to shared storage by splitting it into media files and other documents, right? But in Android 10, scope storage was always optional. Developers could still say, hey, this is a big change and I'm not really prepared for this. I would like to request legacy external storage in my manifest. And with that, you could still work with the old storage format. That's no longer the case in Android 11. Unfortunately, now, or fortunately for the users, scope storage is now compulsory. Like if you're targeting Android 11, you have to opt into scope storage. So most of the scope storage stuff from Android 10 is exactly the same. So whatever changes were introduced in Android 10 more or less are the same things in Android 11, except for a few minor tweaks to make life easier for both users and developers. First up, in the dialog, it's no longer called storage. It will be called files and media to make it more explicit for the user. Next up, bulk access is made easier. So in Android 10, if you want to edit or perform any action on a file which is not owned by you, and the user wants to perform access on 10 different files, the user would have to grant access to 10 different files individually one by one. But now we have a bulk API, which is like you can bucket together all the list of files you want to access to, set off an permissions intent to the user, and the user can grant access to all of those 10 different files in one go rather than have to do it like Android 10 where they have to grant permission one by one, which was actually really tedious. And once the permission is granted, you can take access on all 10 of them together. In terms of action document tree, so if you're using a file picker and you want permissions and you want to be able to access documents of the user and you use the document tree flag, you're restricted to not being able to read anything inside the downloads and the Android data and OBB folders. Those are off limits now. If you use action open document instead of document tree, then Android folders like data and OBB are off limits. Download folder can still be accessed under action open document. So you can still get access to documents which are inside the download folder. Lastly, manage external storage. If you really need an app which needs full grain permissions rather than under scope storage, like you need access to all the permission or all the storage of the user, that's still possible. But again, just like the package visibility, this is gated behind a Google Play policy. Like if you're a file manager, you'll have to go through the Google Play policy, make sure you're not breaking any guidelines, and then you'll be able to publish such an app into the store. All right. Now just a quick turnaround onto some other nitpicks and some few other minor privacy changes which we cannot bucket under specific tools, specific sections. Phone permissions have been restricted. So earlier, the read phone state would give you access to calling state, which is generic info, like is the phone ringing, is the phone idle? But that would also give you access to the phone number of the user who's calling in, right? Through read phone state, you could actually get that information as well. That's restricted now. Now through read phone state, you only get access to the calling state, and there's a new permission introduced called read phone numbers if you need access to the phone number as well. All right, and you can declare that new phone number permission in the manifest and put a max on the previous one because that only gave you access for the ringing and the idle information. MAC address is now restricted. If you apps can no longer address MAC addresses for network interfaces, that's been something of an ongoing trend as of Android 10, 9, and now in 11 as well. System alert window has also been restricted. This was anyways removed in Android Go builds, but now in Android 10, it could no longer be granted in-app. In Android 11, you can no longer deep link to the system setting to grant. You have to deep link to the generic app list where the user has to explicitly find your app selected and then grant permission to draw overlay windows on top. As was mentioned in the previous last talk, Bubbles is a great replacement for this. So if you are using this for kind of a messaging kind of an interface, use Bubbles instead of using system alert window. Adapting to changes, I think this was covered in the previous talk as well. There's a new app compatibility framework in the developer options where you can specifically enable certain features for your app even without targeting Android R. Since most of them come into place when you're targeting Android R, you could go into developer options, enable this, and test your app for each individual change one by one and see how you can adapt your apps for this. And just one more thing to highlight for app compatibility, you can only change behaviors for developer builds, like debug builds. You cannot take a production app and be like, hey, enable auto reset permissions for this, because that app doesn't support Android 11 yet, so you cannot modify its behavior. But if you have a debug build, the idea being you own the debug build, you can start to modify particular behaviors for that app. That's it. That's a wrap up. A lot of privacy changes. Most of them, if you're doing best practices, it should be a straightforward migration. No changes needed. If you opted in scope storage in Android 10, again, should be more or less straightforward. And that's about it. see you at the Q&A later in case you guys have any questions. And if you want to send off questions in a different way, feel free to follow me on Twitter and post your questions over there. I'll gladly respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurabh, for sharing your knowledge on Android with us. It was interactive and helpful. I'd also like to thank you people for being an interactive audience. To bring some fun, I would like to invite Shivaram Sastry, the core team member of GDG Jalandhar, to engage us with the icebreakers. Over to you, Shivaram.
Hey all, I hope you are doing great. So welcome to the icebreaker session. Till now we had a technical activity. Let's dive into the icebreaker session. Yeah, our flow goes like this: quizzes, facts, and a question and all. Let's dive. Yeah, let's go into the quiz first. So which company launched first mobile phone? There are three options: A, Google; B, Samsung; C, Motorola. Guess, and please post your answers in the comment box. We will be waiting for your answers. Yay. Okay, so most of the members see, yes, Motorola is right. So Motorola was the first company to produce a handheld mobile phone on April 3rd, 1973. Martin Cooper, a Motorola researcher and executive, made the first mobile telephone. So next, go to second question. Yeah, which company launched first Android smartphone? A, Microsoft; B, Motorola; C, HTC. Hold on. Cool. Motorola made. Okay, guys. Cool. Yeah, answer is yeah, HTC. So HTC Dream, the first commercially available smartphone running Android, was the HTC Dream, also known as T-Mobile G1 series, and which was announced in 23rd September 2008. So next, go to the third question. Yeah, who invented Android logo? Yeah, there are three options available: Irina Block, Andy Rubin, the creator, and Sundar Pichai. So answers, please. Cool. Lots of Android last year. Oh, lots of people are saying Andy Rubin. Let's see the answer. Oh, it's Arena Blog, because Andy Rubin was the inventor of the Android, not the Android logo. Irina Blog, who designed the Android logo. The Android logo was created by a designer called Irina Blog, which while she was working for Google, the idea was to create an open source logo for the developer community. Since all of you know that Android is the one of the biggest open source projects. So next, let's dive to the next question. Yeah, Android was initially invented to build software for digital cameras or smartwatches or computers. Let's see the answers. Cool. Okay, Rasha, let me check. Let's see the answer. Oh, Android was initially invented to build software for economic Tokyo, as per 2013 news. Andy Rubin, the co-founder of Android, revealed that Android was originally made for digital cameras. Oh. The plan was to create a camera platform that would include cloud storage for images and videos. Oh, it's really great. Uh, Next, dive to next question. Yeah, Android's logo isn't actually called Android, is it? Google unofficially call it as Fan Android or Bugroid or a robot. Robot. C. Oh, cool. Let's see the answer. Okay, it is called as Bugdroid. Android's logo isn't actually called Android. Google unofficially call him as, yeah, Google developers unofficially call it as Bugdroid. All the coders know what that means exactly. Cool, guys. Yeah. Which version of Android was never used on phones? Never was used on phones? Which version? 3.0? Yeah, 4.0 or 5.0? Let's see the answers. Never ever used on phones. I don't know. Okay. So the answer is Android 3.0. Yeah. Honeycomb period was a weird time for Android. Android 3.0 came into the world as a tablet-only release. To the company, the launch of the Motorola Xoom and through the subsequent 3.1 and 3.2 updates, it remained a tablet-exclusive entity. So it was not used on the mobile phones till now. Okay, so next we go for some fun facts of Android. Most of the fun facts are unknown. Let's see what are those. The original Android robot was inspired by restroom signs. Oh. Google has statues outside its headquarters for each version of Android. It's really amazing. Google struck a deal with Nestle to use the name of KitKat. Okay, KitKat was owned by Nestle. I see. Uh, the very first Android phone from 2008 had no headphone jack and required an adapter. Oh my god. Human with a robo appearance is the meaning of the word android. Okay. It refers to a male robot. Gynoid is the female looking robot. Oh, I never seen this. Have you guys ever seen Gynoid? Please comment. There are floating space robots that carry handsets that use the Android Gingerbread operating system. Oh yeah, that's really awesome. Even space robots are using Android. Great. Approximately 2 billion a year is paid to Microsoft from Android for patent royalties. Oh, I don't know. Okay, one last question. Most of you are already waiting for this question, I guess, which is generally asked in meetups, but this is something newly asked in online event. Let's see what's that question. Oh, all of you tell us the names of Android versions from A to P. Not you have to say in alphabetical order from A to P, not a single version name. It's better if you write all names in one comment. Otherwise, we have to find who is the winner. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So thank you guys. Thank you for attending icebreaker session. Let's dive deep into the further sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivram, for this engaging session. It was full of fun and learning together. I'm thrilled to see the level of excitement you guys possess and the way you engaged with Shivram in answering the questions and in playing the game. I would also like to remind you about the feedback form, which you can fill at bit.ly/A11feedback. Next up, we have Pankaj Rai, Google Developer Expert for Firebase, to talk to us about Firebase for enterprise applications. Over to you, Pankaj.
Hello everyone, I'm Pankaj Rai. I develop Android applications in Verizon, and today I'm here to talk about how Firebase is useful for building enterprise applications. So before I proceed towards Firebase, the first and foremost thing is that what are the requirements of enterprise applications? So these are three core things that we should care about when we develop enterprise applications: security, scalability, and stability. Security is really important for us because we do not want our data, our user data to get leaked out. So it is really important. But adding security for the applications, for the services is not that straightforward. Scalability is another such factor for the enterprise applications. Because today you may have one user, 100 users, and tomorrow if suddenly it switches to a million or a billion user, you still want your websites or your applications to work as it is. Stability altogether, it's during the development you care about it, you know how well it is working. But adding these three core components are not so straightforward because this is going to increase the cost of development, maintenance, and eventually it's going to be a costly app development. So how about using something which already provide these three things to us, some third party services or tools? And we do have certain services like Firebase. So Firebase is a Google platform to build a great quality app in short span of time. It provides us the services for Android, iOS, and web. And all the services are highly scalable, they are secure, and they are highly stable also. And today we are going to see few other services. Let me talk about remote config first. Remote config is one of the very widely used service of Firebase. And what it does, let's see that. So think of the scenario where you want to change the theme of your application. Now, because we are talking about the enterprise application, then we are talking about those users who may or may not update app so frequently. You may have a very large user base. So now when you're trying to update the app of theme of the application, and now it's a case like you're updating, you're pushing app to the Play Store, but user may or may not update the app at the right time. So your intent of updating the theme, you may not achieve it. So how about you can get this control from your side that you can change the theme of your applications without pushing app to the Play Store once again, or enabling or disabling certain features without pushing app to the Play Store once again, or even to the App Store for iOS. So anything which depends on a key value pair, you can control through remote config. Another one is A/B testing. Now we know about A/B testing. A/B testing is really important for us as we want to know that which version of a particular look or features, even the ML models, are working well for the users. And based on that, we can derive on a particular decision that yes, we could go ahead with this particular design or ML models or anything for which we are doing A/B testing. Now again, A/B testing depends on a key value pair, remote config, and Google Analytics. So if you are using remote config, you're not only controlling the app appearance and behavior, but it is also helping you do an A/B testing. And this is how you could use a remote config in your Android applications. So this is one of the library which I built, called Firebase. Using this code Firebase, you can use the services by just writing single line of code. If you use the normal SDK, then there is an initialization process, setting up the listeners. But with this library, everything is sorted down to a single line of code. And let me talk about this remote config. So this is how you initialize it. Remote config, the best part here is that it maintains one local copy and one at server. And if you change anything to the server, it just override the local copy. So that's what you do with the init remote config. During init remote config, you initialize the local value. And this is really important for us because if your users are installing the applications, and when they open the app, if you're not connected to internet, you do not want to give them an experience that yes, you need to be connected to internet so that it could load the content. Why not to give them a content which is preloaded? And that's where remote config helps actually. So this was about remote config, and again, it is available for Android, iOS, and web. So you could even change your website themes, the content of a theme, and any sort of things which depends on a key value, you can completely control using remote config. And the service is cloud storage. Now, the reason why do I'm talking about, I've taken this service here is because of this stats. Now, one of the stats is that most of the internet traffic comes from mobile, and very few traffic comes from desktop or laptops or any other platform. So when we are talking about mobile applications, then how about getting a service which is really important for us in terms of speed and scalability? And cloud storage is meant for that. It's it's very fast and it's reliable. The key capability of this is robust operations, strong security, and high scalability. Now think of the case where you are trying to upload certain things or download multimedia, say an image file or a video file, and suddenly at 90% you lose the internet connectivity. And especially when if you are trying to develop for those country application where we do not have a very high bandwidth, then it's the most often case there that they get a frequent internet disconnect. So we should take care of those set of users also. So robust operation is like if you lose internet during 90% of the download or upload, you do not bother much about it because Cloud Firestore understands that till 90% the things are done. It's just 10% which is remaining, and it'll start from the 90% rather than again going back to 0%. Security, because we are talking about enterprise application, then security is really a big concern. It's either privacy of the users or their data. So how about adding security again just for this multimedia? You might be having authentication. It could be Google or Facebook or any sort of authentication. But how about adding security again just on cloud storage? So Firebase provides you the security rules. Through the security rules, you can add the security rules again for the cloud storage, which says that which set of users can access what kind of content. It's not like any set of user who's authenticated can access everything on the cloud storage. You can define a constraint there. You might have used the Google Photos. So in Google Photos, you either have one photo or a million photo. It just automatically uploads the content and somehow magically it grows. And same sort of functionality you get with the cloud storage also. Today, if you are having say 20 or 30 multimedia, tomorrow suddenly users are uploading 20 or 30, 100 multimedia like images or videos. You actually do not need to care about it because Firebase understands when to grow or shrink based on the requirement. And this is to summarize that cloud storage supports all sort of multimedia which you can upload there. Either it's a PDF, PNG files, JPEG, or any sort of things. Next is about uh, Cloud Firestore. So one shortage that we have in Cloud Firestore is that it doesn't support multimedia. Now, when it doesn't support multimedia, then we do need some sort of services which could do this work for Cloud Firestore also. So what you can do is that you can upload the multimedia layers, like images to the cloud storage, and the moment you upload it to the cloud storage, you get a URL, you get a download URL, and then you could write this download URL to the Cloud Firestore, and then while retrieving it, you can again download it from the cloud storage. The best among all, which I have extensively used, is the Firebase extension. Firebase extension is a great to have it. Say that you are uploading images. You are uploading image to the cloud storage, and you want to reduce the size of it. You want to create a thumbnail of it. You want to create a circular image out of it. All those things, Firebase extensions or even your custom written cloud functions can do for you. User just need to upload their images on the cloud storage. You'll run a cloud functions there which will do all sort of work for you, reducing, downscaling the image size, converting to another format, or changing the shape of it. Everything's possible there. Best part is that it is available for Android, iOS, and web. So you could build your own website, and you could download the PNGs or any of the other formats right from the cloud storage. Now, as I was talking about Cloud Firestore, so Cloud Firestore is one of the service by Firebase. Now, it's a flexible and a highly scalable database, which is available for Android and web, also Android, iOS, and even web. And we'll talk a bit about Cloud Firestore. So we have talked about cloud storage. Cloud storage is only for multimedia, nothing beyond multimedia. It cannot understand other formats like a raw data, normal raw data. If you want to upload it, then it's normal text file, you upload the text file. But why to do all those things? You already have a database for it. And one of the stats by Google says that we have around 450 million plus internet user on smartphone. And when we have such a huge user base on smartphone, then it is our responsibility also to take care of this set of users. If we have a very fast and reliable database, then we could provide them a good seamless experience while using either website or even mobile applications. But for that, we need a very good database. Image is not a great part for any website or even a mobile application. It's a very small part. But raw data consumes most of the website or even mobile applications. And the best part is that Cloud Firestore is not only fast, it is flexible, it gives you the real-time updates, it offers offline support out of the capability and designed to scale. With flexibility, what do I mean is that, say that if you have used real-time database of Firebase before, then you might know that the real-time database is just a huge single JSON object. And if you want to add more content to it, you just increase the hierarchies. So it's good. It's good. It's very fast. But for the large scale application, it's not that flexible. But when it comes to the Cloud Firestore, the structure is completely different here. It's purely based on collection and document. And this makes it well organized. So for that, now, if you want to increase the hierarchy of it, you do not need to increase the, like, you need not have to add the child of a JSON object. Rather, you could add a collection to a document can again have a sub collection. That sub collection again could have any number of documents. Real-time update is the heart of any real-time database. So real-time update is like, you'll not ask for the update over and over, like no pull to refresh, no exit from the app, then again come back to the app to see the updates, no button to fetch the update once again. Rather, whenever any content is available, you see the data. Offline support is now for anyone who has developed this Android applications which only deals with data. They might know that it's an often requirement that we need to support offline capability also. Offline capability which Cloud Firestore offers allows you to read data, write data, update data, delete it. So you could do all sort of operations which you could do when you're connected to internet. And as soon as your internet is available once again, it will push all those things back to the Cloud Firestore. And designed to scale. So it's one of the database which is highly scalable. Like for example, today again, say that you are building a new applications and you might have just a 1,000 users, 100 users, and tomorrow by any chance it got highly scaled up and you got 1 million users. So automatically Firebase will scale up the database for you because you are getting more number of hits. It understands that it requires more bandwidth consumption and all sort of server configuration. It will automatically scale up for you. And then suddenly after next day, this number of users comes down. Then to save the cost, it will automatically downscale also. So upscaling and downscaling is done automatically on your behalf. And these are the regions that we have, because we are talking about the database. So this database has to be hosted somewhere. So we have this many data centers, and this is where we host our data. In India, we have Mumbai. So if you are building an application for the local community, for the Indian community, and you want to store the Indian users' data in India itself, then you could store it in Mumbai data center. We have two kinds of data centers here. Now, one is regional data center, and another one is multi-regional data centers. The multi-regional data center is, as soon as you upload your data, you write anything, it gets replicated on other data centers also. So in case of any catastrophic event or server goes down, that data center is not working, you still have your data, because the same replicated data is maintained on multiple data centers. But when it comes for the regional data centers, then it's just a single data center where you upload all sort of data. So if anything goes wrong with the data centers, if it goes down, then there is a greater chance that you may lose your data also, provided you are not exporting manually. So again, it depends on your use case, that what sort of things you want. Either you want multi-regional data center or the regional data centers. In case of regional data center, it's quite cheaper than the multi-regional data center because it's on a single data center. Multi-regional is a bit costly because it is maintained on multiple data centers. And this is where I was saying that Firestore is flexible. Now you could see the restaurant here is a collection. It's a name of a collection, and this collection could store any number of documents. There's no such restriction on the number of document in a single collection. Now, in case you want to increase the hierarchy of it, that this particular document should also have something, and this document could be parent of it, then you could add another collection, and that collection could store another set of documents. So by this way, you organize your data very much properly there, that not only from the app, rather from the console also, you see a well formatted data. And this is again useful for querying it. Now, Firestore is having much more querying capability than the real-time database which Firebase offers. And if you are using, again, the Code Firebase, then as I said, that Code Firebase, the whole objective why I built that library is to reduce everything to a single line of code. So if you're using that library, so this is what you need to write. Just firestore.get from document, specify the document ID, and you get the data as a live data. That's it. If you want to set up the real-time listeners, just pass it as a true variable. That's it. And this is how you could read from the database. And same is true for writing also. It's a single line of code for reading and writing. Okay, now we have some sort of restriction also. It's not completely free. It's not something like you could use it as your wish. There is certain limitations also for this. The limitation states is, for every document, you could only have a 20K indexed elements. With 20K indexed element, what do I mean is that, say you have a key value pair, and all document is storing values as a key value pair. In short, it's a JSON, but the way it looks like in the console is like a key value pair. So each key value pair is counted as a single index. Also, if you are having an array of 10 elements, then those are counted as 10 individual indexed elements. Say you have a name as a field and address as one more field. Address is an array type. So it's not like a just two indexed element, rather it's more than two then. Another set of restriction on the database itself is 10,000 writes per second. So you cannot go beyond 10,000 writes per database. And best part is that it supports 1 million concurrent connection to Cloud Firestore. So your user will never feel as if page is loading or they are unable to connect to the server. It offers 1 million concurrent connection. A restriction among the collection and document is that every collection should have a unique ID. And same is true for the document also. Document should have a unique ID based on collection. So different collection could have the same document ID, but inside a collection, it should have different IDs. And collection cannot store collection. It's like an odd even pair where it should be collection should store document, then document can again store collection can again store documents. But it cannot be case like collection storing another collection or a document storing another document. That's not possible. Okay, now let's talk about the performance. Performance is important for us. So we have talked about the Firestore. Firestore is important for us for database, for raw data. Then we talked about the storage, cloud storage, because when we build multimedia application, like even for websites, normal websites or mobile applications, we need support for multimedia also, like images or the videos. For that, we have cloud storage. And we've talked about remote config. Remote config is anything, even theme of your applications or features or A/B testing or any sort of things which you want to do, which depends on a key value pair. You could use remote config. So these are great services to have it. But how do you monitor the performance of your application? We have added all those things. We have added the services. Now we want to see how app is performing. For that, we have Firebase performance monitoring. It's a straightforward SDK for Android, iOS. So what you could do is that just add the SDK and it automatically starts tracing the user behaviors there, gain the insights about how user is using it. And even you could add a custom monitoring there. Now the traces which it automatically traces is like the native applications traces. We'll talk about this later. Gain insight. Now insight is important for us because this gives us information that our user is coming from which country, they are on which OS level. And monitoring is like if your use case doesn't fulfill with what Firebase is offering with the automatic tracing and insights, then you could add your own custom monitoring also. Now let's see about the traces. By default, it gives you this 4 tracing capabilities. CPU utilization. So how much CPU and the system time that app is using, it gives you this information. And this is important for us because if app is consuming lots of CPU consumptions there, then it's an often case that this app is going to consume a lot of battery. Same is true with the memory also. It gives you the information about what is the maximum heap memory allocated for the application and how much memory the app is consuming. It's a very normal case that if app is consuming more than the heap memory, then there's something wrong going on there. Either app could run out of memory or system could kill another processes for saving memories. So you should always take care of these things, that app should not cross the heap memory. Individual information is like when you're doing a network hit. So it gives you information that for each network hit, what was the request payload size, what was the response payload size, whether the call was successful or not, and or it just got lost. So it gives you this all sort of information. And the best of all is the device attributes, because based on this you could add filters. These filters are important for us because if we add these filters, we could target particular section of the user. Like if you want to see the CPU memory consumption or network information all for the users who are in India or in US, we could just set a filter based on country because we are getting the device attributes. And same is true for the mobile versions also. That app may not be working in few version of Android OS, but may be working so great on another set of OS. So we could filter out and then figure it out at what's going wrong there. So these are the information that you could get with the Firebase performance monitoring without writing a single line of code. Just add the SDK and that's it. At the end, I would like to say that Firebase is truly an all-in-one platform where we have lots of services. We have services for machine learning, we have for Crashlytics, monitoring, then user audiences, like for predictions. So we have lots of services which is useful for all 3 platforms. And if you feel that there are few other services which is not working so well, or you think that this service is missing some key features, then you could again reach out to the Firebase support team and they will be happy to listen back that what is the thing which you are missing, which they are missing and which you want. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Pankaj, for the amazing session. I hope you all enjoyed the session and If you have any questions, we'll be taking them up in the Ask Me Anything sessions. Feel free to leave your questions in the chat window throughout the session, and we'll get few of them answered at 4:30 p.m. today. Moving forward with the next session, I would like to welcome Kamal Ved, Google Developer Expert for Assistant, and he's also leading GDG Chandigarh community. He's working as technology lead at Infosys and is going to talk about design for Android. Over to you, Kamal.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Osha. Thanks for the warm introduction. Hi guys. My name is Kamal. I'm a GD for Google Assistant. Apart from that, I'm working as a technology lead at Infosys and also running GDG Chandigarh as an organizer. So today I'll be discussing how do we design for Android specifically. So let's. I'll be not taking much of your time. It's a very short, slot that I have been given. So I'll be covering best practices or what should we focus on in order to design good screens or good UI with respect to Android only. So let's get started. Yeah, so very first thing that comes into our mind, how do I design for Android? There are multiple Android devices, right, across the globe available with different screen sizes and dimensions that we need to capture whenever we think of designing Android UI specifically. Okay, so how we were designing earlier? We were using linear layouts, relative, frame, or combinations of these three containers whenever we think that we need to design a particular UI in Android, right? So in order to match our designs with the frameworks or if I say the tools, Zeppelin or Figma that we use to Android designs, so we use these combinations of these three containers mostly, that is linear, relative, and this frame. But how we are doing right now, how we are designing screens in the current era, that is the question. Yeah, so the very first thing that comes into our mind whenever we think of following standard guidelines which are available for Android, right? It is very similar to web as well. We have material guidelines available in web, and similar guidelines we also have for Android as well. Those are material guidelines. If I say very specifically about what do we understand by material guidelines, it's a kind of Bhagavad Gita or a Bible for all the Android UI UX developers. Okay, so when I say Bhagavad Gita or Bible, I mean you don't have to do anything. You don't simply have to do anything. Just simply follow the principles or the process as a foundation of your own kits. That will simply lead to a good Android designs. Okay. Yeah. So what do we understand by material design whenever we talk about material guidelines or material principles in web or in Android specifically? What do we understand by material designs? These are simply a set of principles available for all the Android UI developers just to follow, that will lead to a good Android UI UX design. It's if I just sum up this about Android design or Android guidelines, it's basically a principle that we need to follow for every motion, visual, or even in respect to icons as well. If you want to explore more about Android designs, just go to material.io/developer and Android, where you will find all the guidelines related to Android UI UX and even icons. Yeah. Whenever this is a code that I have put in one of my slides, like whenever we think we need to think like a developer and be creative like a designer as well. If we are Android developer, okay, we do get the designs from designers, UI UX team, right, in Zeppelin or in Figma tools that we need to convert into Android applications. But how do we proceed with that nowadays? Yes, we do. We did have, or we still have, relative, linear, and frame combo to achieve particular UI UX designs. But how do we do that nowadays? I'll simply say use constant layout. It's nothing a view group available in Android, which will allow you to position, size components in a very flexible ways, which will help you to basically adjust your UI UX across platforms, different screen dimensions, and it will automatically scale if you use this Android constant. So I have specifically mentioned about Android constant because I'll be taking these into you guys into much detail or depth about how do we use constants and how does it affect Android UI UX. Yeah. So this is it, using a scale constant. Like if you see here, we are using a scale constant in this particular image or a GIF that I have put in. So use scale or fixed height and width if you want your components to scale as per the device dimension. Okay, if I want a particular component to be scaling with respect to dimensions, I'll be definitely going for the constant, and we should. This is a kind of best principle going on. That's what we are using in the industry right now. So always keep in mind about scalable sizes. And whenever you are designing UI components and Android, use scalable sizes to make your UI components automatically scale as per dimensions of the screen. Yeah, this is another example of best fitted example of constraint nowadays, using this scale size or to vertically grow your text. You can see if we apply constraints, right, and use these fixed size constraints, if your screens or dimensions are varying across different devices or platforms, you can see the text is getting automatically adjusted. So this is the best example that we can find. So it applies a particular behavior just to wrap the content as it grows or reduce on horizontal axis in this example particularly. Yeah, so this is another way of improving your designs nowadays. But if I see these vector images, or how do we earlier used to design Android using images, were just to use, we were using PNGs or basically JPGs as well, right? Putting different PNGs into different dimension folders, maybe I guess right, XHDPI, DPI, and all these folders we were utilizing to make our UI UX compact across different platforms. But nowadays, it's a one way around that. Just use one vector or SVG image that is preferable to make your UI UX look cool or scalable across different platforms, and obviously it will help you to reduce the app size as well. So obvious advantage of using these vector drawables is the size footprint of your APK for sure. The difference in the size of an app if you use these vectors versus pretty images, if I call it, instead of having several packages images that is for different DPI resolutions that we were used to do earlier, when these SVGs or vectors were not available. But now, since these SVGs are being supported from very long time in Android, it's not a new thing. But since we are discussing about Android UI UX and how to design in Android, so this is an important aspect that I wanted to cover specifically in Android. So have a single file for your particular icon or a background image, if I say, and this SVG will work across platforms and different screen UI different screen sizes for sure. So yeah, so this is all about Android UI UX from my side, and particularly, yeah, just to sum it up, if I summarize whatever we discussed in this this short period or this short presentation, the very first thing whenever we think of UI UX, how to design screens in Android, we need to think of material design, material guidelines. So very first step, if we are starting to build a screen for Android, we should follow the material guidelines. That is, what should be the correct size of an icon, right? If I talk about a launcher icon or a particular icon to be displayed in the app as well, so that should be of that should be following material guidelines. If you are not handling that thing, or your UX designer is providing you icons, so that icon should follow a particular guidelines of material. A particular use case will be of notification icons, right? So we used to face a big problem. We whenever you get a notification in the notification panel, you see a white kind of icon, right? If that icon is not following material guidelines, then you will not be able to see that icon clearly. But if that icon is following particular material guidelines, you'll be able to see that notification icon in the notification panel for sure. This is a problem which is being available above Marshmallow. If icons are not following material guidelines, the notification in the notification panel, it will be displayed as a white icon for sure. And apart from icons, we do have width sizes defined for particular screens that we are using. Okay, that comes under material guidelines that should be followed in order to get a perfect UI UX for Android. Then the second thing that is very important with respect to Android UI designing, that is 360 pattern that we say. There are multiple libraries available from API, DP perspective, right? Scalable pixel, that we call it in Android. There are different libraries available to handle those things for sure. But whenever you are designing a standard Android screen, you should follow a 360 screen as a standard screen, and make your design compact as per 360, because whatever is being built on top of 360 looks perfect on across devices. So if you are developing a huge Android application or enterprise application, or a small application for an organization or for self as well, you'll find all the discipline or Figma designs are aligned to these 360 devices only, and rest you need to modify accordingly. So once you start building Android UI UX, you'll get designs from Zeppelin or Figma with respect to 360 only. The third thing, when you once you start building your Android UI UX, try to use constant layout as much as possible, because it will automatically scale across different dimensions, and different devices across having different dimensions for sure. So it is easy to use. You can have the common mistake that I have seen across developers are doing, they are using constant layout as a parent, but in between they are mixing relative and linear layout as well, just to get the work done basically. So don't mix that. If you are using constant layout in a particular file, so make all your widgets aligned using constant only, and avoid using relative and linear the most. And the last and the most important part in Android UI UX is the images part. So whenever you are building Android applications, try to avoid using PNG images. Okay, earlier we were using 9-patch images just to make sure that that those images automatically compact or scale themselves with the screen dimensions different across different screen dimensions. But now we have SVGs to do that stuff. And the most important thing in SVGs are they are a very small in size. If I say in kbs, you can get it. So obviously it will help you to reduce your APK size for sure. So try to use SVGs images in your Android application as much as you can. So if I'm sure if you follow these four small but important steps, whenever you think of Android UI UX or designing a good Android screen, you'll get a good success in terms of Android screen, good Android screen for sure. Yeah, so this is pretty much from my side. These are the small principles that I wanted to cover. I know it's very short and very brief, right? So with respect to time, but these are the important principles that I wanted to capture very quickly, so that you can get a fair idea how or what are the guidelines that we should follow. So I hope you did make a note of these guidelines, and we'll catch up during Q&A if you have any queries regarding Android UI UX or any other thing. Yeah, thanks. Over to you, Rich.
Thank you, Kamal. That was an amazing session, and I really loved the things and the concepts you just shared about design for Android. It was our pleasure to have you in the session today with the community. We are now open for AMA. So, if you have curated the list of questions, we are now open to AMA, and we have curated a list of questions from our audience that have posted on chat. So let's welcome all the speakers on board once again, along with Shivaram, who will be moderating the AMA with me.
Uh, what API does? I'm not really sure I understand. So bubbles work on notification API, and you can have conversation inside the bubble. So yeah, not really sure I understood the question.
Sorry, I was on mute. I missed it. So yeah, the question is for Saurabh from Trishna that what about the data if we auto reset the permissions for storage? I think Saurabh is facing some issues. So if any one of you can pick this question up if you want to.
So if I understand correctly, the question is like if the permission for storage is auto resetted, what happens to the data which was already stored? So the data will remain wherever it is. So resetting permissions won't really affect, like it won't delete data. So it's just you can no longer access storage if the permission was taken away. Existing data should not get deleted in any manner. But of course, you won't be able to access it because you know. I think Saurabh is here.
Yes, Saurabh.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry.
you
I was
for
thinking.
answering it.
Yeah, sorry. What was
Yes.
the question?
So the question is, what about the data if we auto reset the permissions for storage?
The data would still be there inside the app. It's just it will not be available for you to query. So if the permission is being granted all over again, then you can get that data all over again. And if it's your own app's data, then that's always available if it's inside your app's own storage.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jiten and Saurabh, for answering these questions. Moving ahead with the next question for Pankaj, and it has been asked by Bharat that can we check that how many users are connected to Cloud Firestore database programmatically?
Uh, there we do not have a direct support for this actually. We cannot check the number of users who are connected to the Firebase either to the real-time database or to the Cloud Firestore programmatically. But yes, there is a way where we could add a counters. But if your question is about connected to the Firestore, so if your question is about the number of users who are online currently, that we do not have support for this.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pankaj, for answering this question. So the next question is by me only to you, Kamal. I'm so sorry that you got less time to speak about design for Android. So if you can just talk more about design guidelines a bit more, the best practices which one should follow.
Yeah, sure, Varsha. If be specific, you don't have that much of guidelines available, but no, you need to follow material guidelines for sure. That are the best practices. But one thing that I missed during my session was that accessibility. So whenever you are designing your Android application, it's always very important to have accessibility options. So whenever you design your Android application in terms of text or images, so to keep in mind accessibility option as well. So yeah, if you follow the particular guidelines, whatever I described, constraints layout, constant layout, material guidelines, and maybe more use of svg images, that should lead to a good Android design for sure.
Okay, thank you so
And
much, Kamal.
yeah,
Yeah, sure, go on.
Yeah, so I was just saying that if you want more description about this, you can always go to material.io /Android, where all the guidelines are specifically described for Android applications in terms of icons, what needs to be used. If you want specific designs for Android or round icons for launcher icons as well in Android applications, that are also available. So each and every guidelines is available in material.io. But again, it depends how you are following it. Moreover, we as developers, if I talk specifically about developers, we don't get into that much depth about Android designing, because all the designs are being provided by UI UX designers, which also refer these material guidelines. But it's always good to have some sort of knowledge about this designing thing in Android, so that you can always go back to your UI UX designer saying that this is not as per material guidelines, and that can be corrected. So if you want to avoid multiple issues in different platforms for Android, yeah, so you can always go to material.io.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kamal, for this answer. Moving back to Jitin, this question has been asked by Trishna that how to run applications that have recent features, like recent Android features, maybe.
Okay, how to run bit weird question. So I think if you want to target the latest features, just start targeting SDK versions. So basically, if the question is like, how do I get the latest features on my application? So let's say you want to start using Android 11 features. The first thing you need to do is set up target SDK as 30, which is available now. So you can start using those features in your application. Some of the platform specific features may have to be basically guarded via if check, basically because they might not work on lower API versions. So that's about it. Just change your target SDK versions and make sure any platform breaking change like scope storage or something like that, you have written code for that, like accessing scope storage and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next question is for you, Saurabh. Do these permission options are also available for system applications?
Do these permission options? I think this question is about auto reset permissions, and if that's the case, then yes, they will also apply to system apps. But my concern there would be like system apps, mostly people tend to use them frequently, so they might not trigger in for them because the inactivity period needs to be a couple of months. But if yes, there's a system app which hasn't been used for a couple of months, then the auto reset should apply for them as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Pankaj, the question to you is from Amanpreet Kaur that can we change light and dark theme dynamically in Fastore or Firebase maybe?
Yes, if the objective is just to change the theme of your application, then I believe that Firebase support is really not needed. We have a dark and light theme direct supported from the Android application itself. Even the Material Design Library 1.1 give this support. But even if you want to control from the Firebase, then remote config is the service. Using remote config, you can set this kind of themes where you want to enable, say, light theme, dark theme, or any other special themes which you want to set for special occasions. Then yes, you can do this using remote config service.
Okay, thank you. Any one of you can, like, if you just want to pick this question up, maybe Kamal, Jitin, Saurabh.
Yeah, sure. Varsha, I did had this use case in one of my application where we give user a settings option where he can opt for light and dynamic themes, or basically switch between themes. So what happens is basically whenever you give this option to user and users switches from one theme to another, the app needs to be restarted and everything needs to be readjusted according to the theme. So yes, you can make your theme light and dark dynamically in Android for sure.
Okay, thank you, Kamal, for this answer. So the next question is for you, Kamal. I don't know the name of the person. So you said that we should use SVG images, but if we need to choose any other format, which one will you suggest? Like, I don't have any option of SVG image. So which image format should we go? Like, should I go with?
No, no. If I, it is a recommendation. There are other formats available as well that you can use apart from SVG images. we still one of my application we are using PNG images, right? That is all application, or you can say legacy application that we have. So you can use other formats. Again, it depends what is your motive, or what you need to achieve. But if you want to achieve a good design, and with respect to APK size and everything, so all these things come together ultimately to give you a very compact application in terms of design and APK sizes as well. So recommendation is always vector drawings or these SVG images that we need, that we recommend to use. So yeah, you can use PNG, JPG, and GIF images as well. So it depends upon your use case.
Okay, thank you. So one more question is from the live comment during AMA from Dharamveer Gupta, that is there something like one design for all device type? And this question is open for everyone. So like if anyone wants to pick this up.
Can you repeat, Varsha?
Yeah, the question is there something like one design for all device type?
I think it's a very subjective thing to discuss, especially in Android, where we have so many resolutions and so many different screen sizes. So definitely, like when it comes to design side, I think the 360 DP is the standard frame on which they often do the designs. So it's kind of easily scalable as long as you use a DP and SP. But like I almost on monthly basis find out one like piece of design within my app which doesn't really scale well with like lower resolution device or higher resolution device. So you might have to have some logic. If it's like a very sophisticated piece of UI which will not really work if it scales down, if it scales down really badly in some devices, then you might need some logic. But I think with 360 DP designs, which designers might use with a like a 480 into 360 phone, it usually scales well if you're using DP and SP in the dimensions and text dimensions. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Jitin. Any one of you, like if you want to pick this question up, you may like answer this.
Yeah, just adding to what Jatin said. There is nothing, one design for Android, right? It's if you want whatever you are designing, it's as per 360 by 640, right? It's a standard, very much standard screen in Android. But if you want to add, if you are facing specific issues regarding specific devices or a particular resolution, you can always opt for different resolution folders and add supportive pixels or dimensions or values if you want. That can help you out. But again, 360 by 640 is a standard design that goes very well along with different resolutions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kamal and Jatin, for answering this question. I think like we are done with the questions, and that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great having you with us. Thank you, and that's it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I would love to extend my gratitude to all the speakers and attendees here today, and we believe that you enjoyed learning. Please fill the feedback form and we will share your participation certificate by the end of the July. And again, I would love to take this opportunity to thank my team to make this event a huge success. It would have not been possible without of them. Thank you so much for being excellent speaker, energetic audience and remarkable team together. Make good things together. See you and stay safe.